In this session, I want to share with you my passion for one of the most amazing tools for exploring language in context, which is Corpus. And I'm presenting this webinar not as an expert, but as a strong believer in corpus linguistics. And I hope with those activities that I prepared for you today, I will show you a little glimpse of what we can actually do with corpora for our classrooms and for not only for teaching, but also for learning English. And hopefully I will inspire each of us to take it further and tap into many, many more applications of corpora for our classroom. And to start it right away, we are gonna see where we are in terms of understanding of what corpus is and why bother using corpus at all in our classrooms, why corpus should be on our list of resources to go, as well as some practical ideas. And you're welcome to share your comments and ask your questions in the chat box, and I will try to address them as they come in today. So logically, to start this session today, I would like to ask you, what do you think a corpus is? I'm sure you had some, for those of you who are not familiar, you probably have at least some idea or assumption or expectation of what corpus could be and what it can help us do with the language. So please share your ideas in the chat box. Okay, Doreen, that's a good place to start. I hope I will be able to explain some of the basic features of using corpus today. Okay, Natalia, a collection of text, a body of language. I think all of these definitions could fit in into the meaning of a word corpus. Meanwhile, I will share some of my thoughts that came to my mind when I just started exploring corpus. It sounded like a weird word with a weird plural form. It had this connotation of implying something large. I thought that it could show how words were connected and which words tend to go together in language. For me, it was some kind of a tool that linguists use to research a language. Another question would be, do you use corpus? If not, then what do you expect to be able to do with corpus? And if yes, then how do you use it? Okay, Deborah, word banks. Well, I looked the definition of corpus in online Longman Dictionary, and the primary meaning of corpus is defined as a collection of the writing of a particular kind or by a particular person. And then the second meaning would be a large collection of written or spoken language that is used for studying the language. And yes, I think that word banks are kind of word lists. Maybe Deborah can elaborate on that further. But what I'm trying to say that given this definition, we all use corpus to some extent, almost every day. If we think about Google as the repository of web content, this could be our corpus. But when we think about conventional corpora, implying that it is a repository of language that of language materials that is tagged and that is analyzed linguistically and built specifically for linguistic purposes, then we think about conventional corpora such as Examples could be British National Corpus or Corpus of Contemporary Academic English. And besides those corpora, there are also corpus-based tools that use, for example, web content as a corpus, or corpus-based tools that use a conventional corpus as a repository of language, but they have some additional features to perform our queries on the language. And we will tap into that a little bit more in the next slides. So the most up-to-date freely available corpus online is considered the Corpus of Contemporary American English. It contains 450 million words, and it covers the period of time from 1990 to 2012. And those materials come from different genres. So it can be fiction, it can be magazines, newspapers, talk shows, and many more. Now, some of you might be scared away by the period of time that corpora covers, right? It can be considered as outdated language, because I agree, and language is constantly changing. It is a living thing, and its lexical level is most apt to changes as a result of global languages being in contact, or new notions or new concepts developed that need to be defined by the language. But at the same time, the morphological or the grammar, phonetics of the language is not that changing. We still use the same words that were used many hundreds years ago. And for seeing a bigger picture, for seeing patterns and behaviors, idiosyncrasies of language, corpora can serve this purpose quite fine. Now, there are some other types of corpus that we might not be that familiar with, because they are developed for specific purposes, such as multilingual corpus that contains texts in different languages, and you are able to compare them side by side. There are also parallel corpora that contain texts in the original, and then the same text translated in another language, and they are mostly used by translators and interpreters. The most interesting corpus for ESL context could be learner corpus. For example, the Lonman Dictionary of Common Errors is based entirely on corpus of genuine students' writing, and it can provide some insight on why students of a certain first language are making those mistakes, and how we can use them as the tool to teach language more effectively. Yes, Murat, that's right, that you need to register for Corpus of Contemporary English as well as British National Corpus after 15 searches you perform at a time, but it's completely free, and I think that developers of that corpus are interested in collecting the data from people who use it, and I know sometimes they even can send you messages asking about types of research you're doing and collaborating. So there is no fee for it. It's free. It's only the matter of having your password and your username, and then you are free to go. I found the Corpus of Canadian English, I believe, when I went to Corpus of Contemporary American English, and then there is a drop-down list where you can actually specify what kind of corpus you would like to use. it's much smaller. I think it's 15 million words, and unfortunately, I don't have the link right now with me, but I will be able to search it and retrieve it for you. Okay, thank you. And there are some other types of corpus that are used for specific purposes, but we won't focus much on the theory. We will go into applications and some ideas of how we can use corpus in the classroom. So to give it a try, I would like to ask you, what adjectives do you think collocate with the word Canada, or what adjectives come to your mind first when thinking about Canada? Okay, free Canada, cold. Vast. Okay. These are all good examples. And by the way, these first associations that come to your mind really reflect your perception of the certain concept, Canada in this case. And using corpus, we can actually see how our perceptions are represented in it. Multicultural, friendly. Okay. So let's give it a try, and all you need to do is to click on this link that will take you to Corpus of Contemporary American English, and you will need to click Enter and then type Canada in this word string, then click on Collocates and choose 1 for the left side and 0 for the right side, because we are trying to see what is the nearest adjective to collocate with Canada, right, on the left side. Then you will need to click on POS list, POS standing for parts of speech, and choose adjectives all from the drop-down list. I hope it doesn't sound too complicated, and you will be able to see the slide in Big Blue Button tab, and then go to Corpus to check it out. And then just click Search, see the results, and come here to share your thoughts and impressions. Okay, you will have about 2 minutes to do that. Okay, Natalia was the quick one. Mahmoud, diversified, versatile, beautiful. Okay, did you get this from Corpus, or these are your own ideas? Okay. Let me know when you are back in the chat. Okay, Deborah, that wasn't very successful try. Make sure you choose one on the left side, at least one. Okay, in the Canadian English corpus, get in geographical collocates, such as upper, eastern, western. That's true. So the top one are geographical descriptions, right? Western, Eastern, Northern, and Southern. Well, and I think it can be explained logically because Canada is the second biggest country by territory in the world. That's why we like to divide it, or we tend to divide it into smaller parts. Or maybe there are some other explanations. Maybe it's really most used words that collocate with Canada. But what is interesting to see, I believe that Mura used Canadian English corpus. And I did perform the research on Canadian English corpus, and the results differed very slightly, with only difference that Canadian corpus didn't contain such adjectives as non-terrorist, promoting, or neutral. And I think it could be perceived as a perception of Americans about Canada, or there could be other underlying reasons why Canada is defined like that, right? So anyway, I just wanted to show you how this activity can be used with learners. I quite often use it with my learners when they ask me for just the right word. I do those searches for word collocations and use the list for expanding and enriching learners' vocabulary. And I also use it for brainstorming possible word combinations and then checking them against corpora. So when I was preparing this webinar, I thought about the example when I had a learner and she had to write, she was asked to write a recipe, and she was looking for an adjective to describe the density of dough. And she wasn't quite sure whether it has to be tough, firm, hard, or other adjectives to describe what she meant. And I told her that I knew this really exciting tool for her to explore different adjectives that collocate with the word dough. And when she performed her query, she was able to identify some words on the list that she could actually use with to imply the meaning she was looking for. So this is firm and stiff. And besides finding those words she was looking for, she was also exposed to almost 100 more adjectives to describe dough. And if you're lucky to get those inquisitive learners, they are excited to go through the list and see some other maybe unknown or interesting words, and have some little discoveries about the language. In case of my learner, she actually discovered that dough can be forgiving, and that was quite interesting to her to see some metaphorical usages of words and collocations. Another example is to present a new vocabulary, but not as isolated words, but in chunks and collocations, or use it as well as it's a really great warm-up activity. It is called fork activity because it's supposed to visually represent fork. So here at the base we have the keyword that we would look for, and I give the students the bunch of other words that collocate with the verb, or it can be used the other way around. Instead of giving them instead of looking for the keyword, they can look for those on the other side and come up with as many as they can. So this is one thing how you can use corpora. I also like to use the a language that my learners are already comfortable with, and then build on and expand this vocabulary range they have. So I noticed that commonly used words, of course, would be a beautiful house, let's say. Beautiful is used quite often, and that's the word they operate when they are at lower level of fluency. So then I ask them to go to corpora, or if not, then I can just give them the list. If I don't have time, I do it myself and then give them the lists. In this case, I performed the search to look for synonyms of the word beautiful to collocate with house. And of course, beautiful is the most frequently used one, but then there are also lovely, attractive, magnificent. And what is interesting to see that there are some unexpected words that can collocate with house. In this case, a handsome house, and my learners were quite surprised to see that. So we actually click on each of these collocations to see them in context, and I do encourage them all the time to see the language in context, because corpora, of course, is not are not perfect. They contain some mistakes and some errors that, or maybe the search is not refined to find only those particular words that we are looking for. So that's good always to click on the context and see how this word is used. It is raising their awareness that the words they already know can have different meanings, not only the one they learned a while back ago, and they don't see any other applications. My learners said that it is not true, because handsome can only be used describing a male. And then we went further and looked it up, and were even more surprised to see that handsome is actually collocated with a woman as well. Although it can be outdated, it can imply different meaning, but it means that the learners understand that the language is not a set of rigid rules, but it can have different meanings in different contexts. Can everyone else see the slides? Okay. So this is for collocation activities. I also like to use the tool that is called Word and Phrase. It uses corpus of contemporary American English as a repository, but it can perform some other queries other than the corpus itself. So basically, what you can do with this tool, you can copy and paste a text in a text box provided, and then you just click search, and you will be able to identify the range of vocabulary for that text. You will be able to retrieve word lists and definitions of each word. And what I like about it is that it's all within one browser tab open. It can be used with some extensive reading activities, because usually Google works perfectly fine when we need to find the definition of a word quickly, and we, of course, won't bother going to research corpus. But then if it's a large text no one has the energy to look through each word meticulously, checking them in the dictionary and compiling those lists. That's why I think it's a really smart way to explore texts. So in this case, I just had a short paragraph pasted in the word and phrase, and once I clicked search, it gave me kind of a text X-ray where the words are color coded according to frequency range. So you can see that most of the function words are belong to 73% of the text, and there are more sophisticated words and even higher level, as well as academic words. So when you click on academic, it highlights the words that can be both in a high frequency level, and they also are used in academic genre. And when you click on each of these words, at the bottom, you will be able to see the definitions and collocations and the examples from Corpus, as well as frequency used by genre. So overload is not used very often in spoken, but it is popular in academic genre or other things. But you can also click on, I don't have the screenshot here, but it also gives you the synonyms for each word, and then you are able to see what synonyms are used in genres if you are in different genres when you are specifically searching for academic range vocabulary. What else it can do? It can give you the word list, and it's useful to have it for some pre-reading activities. So if I am going to take an article or some piece of writing to study with my learners, I can quickly drop it in the search box and then retrieve the list of vocabulary and maybe adapt to different proficiency levels and focus on more commonly used words for lower level, as well as for more sophisticated words in case I have a class with higher level students. So these are my examples of how you can actually use corpora with your learners. Another way I try corpora are to teach pragmatic expressions, or some when I come across some incorrect or maybe not very appropriate usage of phrases in Canadian English. So let's say some of the learners that come from more direct cultures tend to go and say, no, I don't want it, when they are offered something, instead of saying, thank you, I'm good, to sound more polite. So I would go to corpora and search for those sentences containing such, or paragraphs containing those types of language. And also, we can focus on some usages of spoken grammar. Let's say in this example, I have, I so want to get it, as opposed to I want to get it so much. Although the grammar book would describe it, would only give you, I want to get it so much, I want to get it so much. But on the contrary, in spoken English, you can notice that it is used quite often. Or using way for superlative adjectives such as "it's way better" instead of saying "it's much better," or using "yet" with present simple. Some learners are saying, "Oh, teacher, you can't say this to me. I know that yet is used with perfect tenses." But I think it's only the matter of raising this awareness that language is not defined by set of the rules, but it can be played around, and in spoken English we can use many other ways to express the same idea. And there are many more examples of how we can use corpora. It was just a very express version of maybe just to step into this area and see how it can work in practice. But if you're interested and if you go further, there are corpora of spoken English that can be used for different listening activities and for maybe checking those cases of spoken grammar, as well as there are plenty of course books that are developed on using corpus material, and they explain corpus grammar, which is also really good to use with students. I think corpus can have many applications for academic English, as for example, corpus of contemporary American English contains a separate domain of only academic texts. You can even build your own corpus and see and collect samples of writing of your own students, and maybe perform some search or analyze whatever you have, whatever mistakes or whatever areas that need to be addressed. So it is useful to identify them and be aware of them and have them in one place. And of course, there is much more you can do with corpora. All I'm implying with this session is that okay, Adam, you can upload your own material into the tool. It depends what tool you're using. If you're using the conventional corpus, such as British National Corpus or corpus of contemporary American English, then you just deal with that material. But there are also tools that allow you to build your own corpus using your own texts, and then you will need to tag and analyze them according to linguistic criteria, and then you will be able to use it as corpora. As an example of word and phrase, yes, you can use your own text, but that will only allow you to analyze it according to that criteria that is already inbuilt in that corpus. I will later on share links to resources where you can find out tools that can be used for building your own corpus. If you're interested, there is a MOOC that took place on Future Learn. It's an open online course that lasts for 8 weeks, and you go through the process of installing the software and learning how to use it, and then you can build your own corpus. Mura is saying that one highly recommended text explaining corpus is just the tool and how to integrate it into the class. and shares the link. Yes, this is a really good reading that explains how to not only use Corpus, once just by presenting this topics to your learners, because it will take some time, not only for them, but for you in the first place to get used on to how you can use the corpus. It has the certain coding system, and you have to be mindful of the results and be able to analyze them. But once you are comfortable with using Corpus, you can not only have a devoted class in the lab where you explore Corpus, but you can also refer to it from time to time. So your learners become more autonomous, and they don't rely only on teacher to have all those answers about how particular words are used in context, but they can retrieve the data, and if they are adventurous and explore learners that like to explore language, they will go further, and instead of having the defined rules and then performing some activities, they will be able to have the raw material and build their own rules out of them, if that makes sense. You will have access to all the links and presentation slides, as well as to the recording of this webinar. I quite understand maybe your shock about the material, because you don't quite know how to use it yet. But once you are aware of many things you can do with it, and you can try Corpus, it becomes much more easier, and it's much faster, and it can save your time. For example, you need to present some grammar pattern. It could be a present perfect tense, and you just go to corpora and retrieve the results, and you have ready-made gap fill activities for your learners. But in conclusion, I would love to say that Corpus is not replacing dictionaries or grammar books or course books or Google. Each of these serves their own purposes, and for checking words meanings, we can of course go to Google if we just need to quickly check it, and it's not denying that everything that is said in grammar books is wrong. It's not, of course, substituting teacher in the classroom, as there always has to be a discussion around the results they get, and thinking logically why there are such patterns, or this particular word is used in this context. Corpus is not denying everything we know about it. It only shows us how language exists in reality, and it confirms or denies our intuitions about it. It reveals interesting facts. Sometimes you can discover something that you never knew about it. And as I already mentioned, it's a good tool to promote teacher and learner autonomy. Yes, so maybe if, those applications that I showed today could be treated as more sophisticated, more advanced level of fluency with language that you can introduce to your students. But if you start playing with it, you will see many other applications that can be even with lower level students. And I think that Corpus is great to prove us that language is rich, it's creative, it's flexible, and it's allowing and forgiving. It promotes this exploratory or data-driven learning and learner independency, and it triggers our imagination, creativity, and curiosity about language. If you got interested, I have some more materials for you to share. One great resource will be Corpus Linguistics Community on Google+, and it's just packed with tons of ideas on how you can use Corpus, and it's constantly being added to. As I already mentioned, there is a Corpus MOOC at FutureLearn. It took place this fall, but I think it will be repeated in sometime next year, if you are interested. And one great blog, and I'm happy to have Mura Nava here today in this session. He is the owner of this blog, and I really encourage you to go there and check how many more applications there could be for your learners. And then there are some classroom activities and a lesson plan which describes every step you need to take in order to retrieve some basic searches on corpus of contemporary American English. And I have some comments here in the chat box. So indirect use is when the teacher would produce this material. So instead of asking your students to go to corpora and explore language in context, you will just prepare everything in advance and expose your students to that material. But once they get more comfortable, they of course will take it on and be more independent in exploring. And I know it doesn't have the corpora don't have that friendly interface. It's not that cool fancy tool that everyone could be so excited about, but it's really functional, and it's quite easy to use as long as you get used to it. Thanks, Mura, for coming. And this is my thank you to you. Thanks for coming to this session. If you are interested and have any questions, you can contact me. If you require a certificate of attendance for coming to this session, you also email to ybahan@myenglishonline.ca. I will use this opportunity to thank you for coming to our webinars during this calendar year. There will be no more webinars in December, of course, because there is not much time left. But we do have a big event approaching, the Realize Conference for Realize Forum for EL and ESL professionals in Canada. It will take place on January 23rd and 24th, and I do hope to see you all there online for collaborating, sharing, and inspiring.